am Glaucia Rosas, co-founder and director at the EduTech Alliance. In this series of interviews, I am talking with key figures on the international EduTech scene to get their perspectives on how schools can really get themselves on track with their education technology. So, hi everyone. I am so honored to have here with me Mike Tholfsen. He's the product manager on the Microsoft Education team. He's the geek behind the company's most loved products in education: Teams, OneNote, and class notebooks. So Mike, thank you so much for accepting this invitation to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great.
So let me ask you this first question. So what excites you most about Microsoft, what Microsoft is bringing to education at the moment?
Well, I would say, and it's something that I work on, of course, that gets you most excited, but I think what we're doing in this space of inclusion and accessibility and creating assistive software that helps all students. So for example, things like the immersive reader that is really helpful with students in reading. We've got a lot of capabilities inside of Teams that are really inclusive, like our transcription and translation and captioning. And I think a lot of those capabilities, especially during the pandemic, where it's even more important to bring all students forward, that becomes even more important. And kind of related in a way that we more recently announced something we're working on called Reading Progress. It is part of Teams, which helps with reading fluency. So I'm really excited. That's something that's coming up in the future, but we sort of just started talking about it more recently.
Very good. I'm excited to learn more very soon. And my second question is actually related to this. So Teams is coming out with so many new features. Actually, Microsoft Education comes out with many new features, and it's really hard to keep up. So you've launched recently, like in Teams, breakout rooms, transcriptions, whiteboard, lots of accessibility tools, as you just said. So how would Microsoft recommend that schools work to identify and incorporate these new features in their day-to-day operations right across the faculty and not just the early adopters?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a few different ways. I think a really straightforward way that anyone can do is we often will have these Microsoft Educator Center courses. So we actually have like a 1-hour course on how to use Teams in the classroom, what pedagogy, and we're always updating those. Now, we don't update them every day, but we have updated them where breakout rooms are covered and whiteboards. And so at a base level, that one is easily accessible by a broad range of people. And it's created by educators, and the scenarios are really education focused. So that's one way. Another way, and this is, sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes educators do want to know how to specifically use them in the classroom, but a lot of educators want to add their own pedagogy around it. So they don't want to be told, you have to do it in this pedagogically specific way. They just want to know the basics of how does this work? And then I will take it and do what I want with it. And so what I've actually found, I mean, as you probably know, during the pandemic, we found after talking to a lot of educators, they often aren't interested in a really long training. Even an hour is too long. They say, give it to me in 3 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes. And so I've even started creating these short and sweet snippet videos where here's how to do the thing really fast. You don't need to invest a day. You don't need to invest an hour. You need to invest 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so that's been very popular because with the pandemic, people have gotten overwhelmed with so many other things that they just don't have the same time. So we focused on these really short consumable bits as well. And so I've also, on my YouTube channel, I sometimes will put together a batch of things like, hey, here's the 9 newest things in Teams. And they're even categorized like, you don't have to go through all of them. You can just click around and say, okay, 1 minute, that's the thing I want. Here's how to use it, and I'm out. So that's what we've seen, is that people's attention spans and ability to spend on learning a whole new set of things has shrank. So I mean, I even do it on TikTok now. So I even put out 1 minute TikTok videos. Then they've been popular with a lot of teachers, which surprised me, but whatever works.
I've seen your TikToks. Very nice. So you suggested schools just make sure teachers are aware of these channels where they can get this sort of information, and they can't wait to get this sort of support if everyone is requesting this support from IT or the tech leader. So if they make sure everyone knows about those channels, that's very helpful. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's also obviously partners can help too. Sometimes schools will have virtual partners come in and do sessions or answer questions or help them get up and running. But again, during COVID, that just has gotten more difficult than maybe in the past. So that's another option, is working with partners.
Very good. So actually, still on that. So when teachers were trying to adapt their lessons to the online environment, they faced many difficulties, obviously, right? There was a learning curve to that. So those that were trying to do exactly what they were doing in the traditional classroom, now in the online environment, they learned the hard way, this is neither adequate or effective. So what tips can you give these teachers about using the technology they have available to create engaging learning experiences and to promote self-directed learning?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? That's there's not an easy or a one size fits all answer on that one. I think a lot of educators, especially ones that weren't as familiar with technology, where the pandemic forced a lot of people to just jump in and go without, many folks weren't quite sure how the technology even worked. And I think in the realm of being self-directed, there's also a bit on the student side also. Many students had to adapt to learning that way. And what I've seen works the best, and again, this is for people who are have online communities, working and looking at other educators and talking with other educators to see what's working. Like, there's so many ideas out there. There's so much creativity that a lot of times in these online groups, online communities, even in social media, there's a lot of learning on little things that are working. Here's a lesson I used. Here's how I use breakout rooms to do this new type of lesson. Right? Here's how I use OneNote breakouts. If you've heard of OneNote breakouts, that's like a fun way to use OneNote to have engagement. And I mean, in terms of self-directed learning, there are lots of things that are happening with online learning where students have to be more self-directed.
Mhm.
Teams allows some of that. So you could do, teachers can individualize assignments in teams. You can do individualization in OneNote very easy with the class notebook. And there's ways where students can do these things. And there's a lot of third-party apps that really focus on engagement. So there's apps like Buncee or ThingLink, or one of the ones like Flipgrid has a lot of fun and engaging ways. Flipgrid, that for people not aware of Flipgrid, that app has exploded in popularity during the pandemic. And one of the reasons Flipgrid is so popular is that it allows the educator to do almost anything. It's almost like a blank canvas where you can make an assignment in so many different ways. There's something called the Flipgrid Discovery Library, if people haven't ever seen that, where there's all sorts of lesson plans and ideas and engaging ways to use Flipgrid. It's kind of, I like to say Flipgrid is similar to OneNote in that OneNote is this infinite canvas that you can kind of do anything with. And Flipgrid is the video version of that. It's simple, but it's been very engaging for kids. It's kind of fun. It has some social aspects. And we've seen during the pandemic, teachers using Flipgrid for all sorts of different scenarios in different ways.
Yes, because you mentioned the social side of it, makes total sense when you're talking, this distancing, you want to see your friends, you want to see the students. So having a way of seeing and their response to whatever question the teacher poses is very, very useful. Um, and, looking at all this scenario, so many schools we talked to, they're trying to figure out the role that technology will play in their school after this COVID crisis is over. So supposing that the rollout of the vaccination works out worldwide and that in 2022, we are back to normality. So what do you think will happen to blended and hybrid learning then? How do you think schools can prepare to these moments and avoid going back to some of the old ineffective practices that they had?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think a lot of, especially people in the world of education technology, are trying to think through and figure out right now, which is, so there'll be a lot less meetings like this. Like, I think uh, my own prediction is there'll be a lot of, whether it's Zoom or Teams meetings, where people will want to be in person and say like, I had enough Zoom meetings to last me, 5 lifetimes. And so, you know, I will use it when I have to, but I won't use it every day. And but then there's also things where so many teachers, this is something that I heard, where you had a lot of educators, maybe longtime educators, who would say, I never want to use technology. It's too hard. It's too complicated. It's not for me. But then COVID forced all that to evaporate in days in many cases. And so I think there are a lot of educators who said, oh, wow, Flipgrid's amazing. Like, I will use that all the time. Or, hey, Teams is really nice. I can access things on my phone and not have to do maybe as much as I did before, or different apps that are out there. The other thing I found is that things like Immersive Reader that I work on were very underknown. They were not well known. And during the pandemic, because so many students with disabilities had to work at home, they discovered things like the Immersive Reader.
Yep.
And they said, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I'm not going to stop using this when the pandemic ends. And so a lot of assistive technology that people didn't even know they had, and that is free, I think that's going to continue being used. So it'll be a mix. I think there'll be a lot of digital assignments still happening. I think there'll be a lot of these different ed tech apps that were discovered during the pandemic. And I think things like assistive technology will continue to stay important. And there also will be scenarios where having a meeting like this, or using Zoom or using Teams, whatever it might be, will not be a big deal. If you have to use it for some reason, it's like, oh, okay, sure, we'll use it. Where I live, if it snows, great. For kids, it's a bummer because there's not going to be many snow days anymore where you have to stay home because it's snow. It'll just be turn on Teams and we'll be fine. But in general, I think it'll be a good mix of things where, I as much as I love Teams, I'm kind of tired of Teams meetings every day, all the time as well myself. So it'll be nice to have some in person as well.
Definitely. It will be an interesting mix, and I think there will be many variations depending on the region, on access to technology and network and so on. Yeah, it's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
So, well, on Teams, we're talking about teachers using Teams and students, but actually Teams is much more powerful than that, right? It's a tool that you can use in the administrative part of the school. So how can schools plan to move to this next level where staff and school administrators can collaborate and work effectively with this tool as well? And so it's not just focused on students and teachers, but it expands to whole school efficiency.
Yeah, well, that's actually an area that I've worked on quite a long time. I years ago, we created, we called them professional learning communities in the US. I don't know what the equivalent is where you are, but PLCs, which are like virtual teacher communities. And I did some work there, and we brought those concepts into Teams. So you can create a staff team, you can create what's called a PLC team, which is teachers collaborating together. And we have things like a staff notebook that's built into a staff team that allows the staff to collaborate more effectively, to get organized, to like binders and binders of paper exist in the education world.
Yep.
You walk into many principal's office or educator's office, you see paper, binder. And a lot of schools are starting to move fully digital to have all those things in Teams and collaborate. And if there is a staff meeting or a professional learning community meeting that needs to happen at 7 p.m., wouldn't it be easier to just do it over a meeting? Now everyone's comfortable using Teams as meetings. Hey, we could just, people need to drive 45 minutes somewhere and then drive back home 45 minutes for those types of meetings. And that is more common. You're seeing things like Power BI for analytics and data and insights. That's all integrated into Teams. So if you're looking at student data and doing analysis across a school or a district, that's all built into Teams with the new Insights platform we have and rolling that data up. So yeah, actually Teams itself is much more focused on being really a platform to have all sorts of things happen, where assignments is just one piece. for things like professional learning communities and building curriculum that's shared in there and using it in the class, but it can be developed in the PLC team. Now that's a very useful scenario that can happen. And so that's one of the areas that I've been involved with for a while. And I definitely think Teams is only going to get better in terms of that and being more efficient and more collaborative and saving even more time. So taking a lot of the boring paperwork out and turning that digitized, making the workflows better, making it so, some schools will have to hire literally 20 data consultants to stitch together all the dashboards and all the data if they want to have a holistic view. And we think we can simplify and automate a lot of that process so a school can save a lot of money. Maybe they only hire 2 consultants and they don't have to hire 20 consultants to do all this data work. And we can, automate a lot of that stuff and make it simple.
Yeah, and it definitely makes communication much more focused and organized. So definitely no more miscommunication, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And I think we are going to the last question now. So it's a more broad question. So where is Microsoft taking education technology from here? Like in the future, let's say 2025. How do you vision students and teachers experiencing school? It's a very, you can, go wild on your on your thoughts now.
Well, I think at a basic level, we'll see, things around collaboration and communication getting more expanded more broadly in the world, where COVID started that happening. But I think you're going to see wider adoption of technology in more and more countries and much more mobile. So many countries are doing a lot of more mobile education versus PCs. So just on your phone, you'd be surprised. Well, maybe you're not surprised, but sometimes people are surprised at the level of mobile education that is starting to happen. Mm-hmm. I think globally, that's going to just get even, you're going to see more things capable on a phone. Full education, educators using phones more, but definitely students and families and parents. I think that trend will continue to accelerate. I think you're also going to see us being able to get a lot more data and insights and analytics around how students are doing and what they're doing across different subjects and categories. And with our new Insights platform, Microsoft hopes to make that even easier for schools. Like, our goal is, how can we make a lot of the drudgery of data collection and analysis and presentation, make that go away for schools, so you can spend time on the actual analysis, not just building the dashboards and plumbing in all the data from these different places, because that's work you don't want to waste your time on. Let us take care of that. And then I think the other one is just going to be more personalization and the ability to have students and teachers get more personalized insights, more personalized assignments. And the areas that I'll be working on, like, I'm continuing to be really passionate about assistive technology, inclusive technology. I mean, by 2025, dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, things like vision, deaf and hard of hearing, we're going to have significant improvements to help students across the board to have more inclusive and accessible experiences, more equity. And even in things like reading that I work a lot on, I think you're going to see improvements to make reading, whether you're an educator or a student or a school, really help and focus in that area. And then maybe some of these other areas help with math and in writing and focus where we can, because we have access to a lot of really interesting data. And how can we surface that to help make the where the teacher's spending time with each student easier to focus on that student and personalize. So I think those are probably some of the bigger areas.
Very good. So I'm already excited about all of this assistive technology coming up, because that's an area that I'm passionate about. So very exciting, yeah. Very exciting news. Very good, Mike. Well, I know we're reaching the end of this great interview. So I just really wanted to thank you very much for taking the time to be here to share all your experience or knowledge, and hope to see you soon in person, as soon as we can.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. And if people have any questions, feel free. Share my email or share my Twitter handle or other ways that people want to reach out and ask questions. I'm happy to engage.
Very good, very good. Can you tell us your blog? What your your channel. You have a channel with all these videos. Can you tell us that? So we can
Oh yeah, it's at youtube.com and then / and then just my full name, which is Mike Tholfsen. So youtube.com/Mike Tholfsen. And then my TikTok handle, because you know I have more TikTok followers than I do on Twitter and YouTube now. It's crazy.
Really?
But yeah, I've got almost 275,000 TikTok followers now. It's
wow, okay.
my TikTok, and there's no dancing. I don't do any dancing. I just show how-to tips on my screen. But it's
the dancing, you would have like a million.
There we go. TikTok is at, and then my first letter of my name, M, and then my last name, Tholfsen. So at M Tholfsen for TikTok.
Great. We will add this to the video once it's edited. But well, again, thank you so much, and I hope to see you very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.